For this week's final video, I want to talk about when adjectives relate to words within construct chains. So sometimes you'll have an adjective that's modifying just a single noun out of a construct chain. And I want to just give you some help in kind of understanding what happens there and how to tease out the relationship between all of the words in that sentence. So the example sentence that I've written down here is Torat, Adonai, temima, temima. This is not a word you're familiar with, but you know both of these. So Torat is the feminine construct form of the word Torah, right? So Torah ends with a comet's hey, but when it's put into a construct form, the absolute form, right, ends with a comet's hey, but the construct form for a comet's hey noun, feminine singular noun ending with comet's hey, the comets turns into a patach and the hey turns into a tav. That's how you know you have a feminine singular noun in the construct form, or one of the primary ways, if you're lucky enough to have the feminine singular noun end with a comet's hey, which Torah does. So Torat is the word, the instruction or teaching of. Adonai is the conclusion of the construct chain. So Torat Adonai, the teaching of the Lord, temima. Here we have our adjective, temima. Now, this adjective is functioning in the predicate. And so we have to add the English word to be, some version of it, and it's modifying the word Torah. Now, how do I know all of that? Let me tell you. There's several things to keep in mind. First, construct chains cannot be split up by adjectives. So if you have a complete construct chain and then you have an adjective, when you're translating it, you can't split up the construct chain. In translation, it has to be this, of this, of this, of that, or whatever. And so the teaching of the Lord has to remain a phrase in translation. And so the teaching of the Lord is temima. Temima. Now, this example is taken from Psalm 19. This is, I believe, verse 7 in the Hebrew. Torat Adonai temima. It's the first half of a couplet. And temima is the word blameless or perfect or without blemish. So, for instance, it's used when choosing a sacrificial lamb. You want the lamb to be tamim. If it's a male lamb, if it's a female lamb, it would be temima, right? So here, the Torah is feminine, so temima is feminine. So, first thing to keep in mind when translating a construct chain that has one of the nouns is being modified, the first thing to remember is the chain cannot be split up. So in other words, you wouldn't say the Lord's perfect teaching. Okay? The Lord's perfect teaching. That's not how you would translate that because it's breaking up. It's breaking up the construct chain. Now you could potentially, it's still saying the similar thing, but I'm going to encourage you to keep the construct chain consistent. Okay? The second thing to keep in mind is that adjectives agree in gender and number. Let me give one more example of how this would not work. If you said, the perfect Lord's teaching, If you just saw these three words and you thought that the adjective was modifying the word Lord, which is the word that it follows, and you thought it was in the attributive case, right, the attributive relationship, then you would say, well, the adjective is modifying Lord, and so you'd say the perfect Lord's teaching, right? That would be somewhat logical to do, right? But what I'm saying here is don't split up the chain, and keep the chain by itself, and then add the adjective afterwards. Now, the example that I gave earlier, when I said the Lord's perfect teaching, that works well because you knew which word was being modified, or I knew which word was being modified by the adjective. So it works okay, but I'm going to encourage you to keep the construct chain together. Okay, moving on. In order to identify which noun is being modified by the adjective, it helps to remember that nouns and adjectives, when the adjective modifies the noun, they agree in gender and number. And so here you have Torat, which is feminine singular, and you have Adonai, which is a masculine, proper noun. And our adjective is feminine. So we know that the adjective is modifying Torat and not Adonai. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So that which is perfect is the instruction. Now, the Bible wouldn't suggest that God is not perfect, right? But what's being communicated in this specific sentence is that the teaching, the Torah, is what's perfect. That's what's being celebrated in the psalm. Okay, third, pay attention to definiteness. This construct chain is definite, right? The construct chain is definite because Adonai, the last word in the chain, remember that's how definiteness works with construct chains. If the last word is definite, the whole chain is definite. If the last word is indefinite, the whole chain is indefinite. And Adonai is a proper noun, which means it's inherently definite. Therefore, the whole chain is definite. That is how I knew, when I said earlier, that this is a predicate adjective because the definiteness does not agree. So, in the previous video, I said if you have a definite noun and an indefinite adjective, you know it's predicate, because attributive adjectives always agree, but predicate adjectives are never definite. So here you have an indefinite, and therefore predicate adjective, which means in translation, you have to add a version of the verb to be. So here you would say, the instruction of the Lord is perfect, or is blameless, or is without blemish. Okay, let me give you one more example. Okay, here we are with our example. This example is taken from Genesis 8, verse 21. This is with a much longer, well, not much, but a little bit longer construct chain, 3 words instead of 2. You don't know all of them, but I'll tell you what they mean. Yetzer is the noun, the inclination. The inclination of lave, which is the Hebrew word heart. The inclination of, or well, we don't know if it's definite or not. So inclination of heart of ha-adam, which is a word that you know from vocab, humankind, or here it's sort of the humankind, right? It's definite. And so we know that the whole chain is definite. The inclination of the heart of humanity. Ra. Ra is one of the adjectives in this week's chapter. It's the word evil. Or maleficent or malignant, right? It's bad, it's negative, it's eroding, right? It's eroding the good. So the inclination of the heart of humankind was evil. Now, how did I know that it was predicate? Exact same reason from the previous example. The last word in the chain is definite, therefore the whole chain is definite, and the adjective is indefinite, therefore it's a predicate adjective. You have to add the English word to be in order to make it make sense in translation. So hopefully that's helpful on the relationship between adjectives and construct chains.